Hello, everyone. Welcome to our stage chat, Forced into Entrepreneurship with Meera. So just to let everyone know, we'll be recording this session and you're free to on your cameras if you want. So we'll be first going through the list of questions that we've sent on Telegram. The link is in the chat. So afterwards, if anyone has any more questions, we'll be having a short Q&A segment. Okay, so let's start with getting to know more about Meera. So could you start by introducing a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. So it's really nice to meet everyone. I actually interacted with Joy some time back, and that's how this opportunity came about. And I jumped on it because I think it's really nice to share experiences. And if you guys can take away some of it and kind of apply, or if it affects you in some way, then it's great. And I'm really happy to do this. So for me, I'm an author, and I also run a business consultancy. So, and I mean, most of the people I work with they are from all around the world, but predominantly the businesses that I help are in North America. So one of the things that I always say is that whenever anyone sees me on or hears me on like a podcast or a video, it's usually at really late our time, Singapore time. It's usually like 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. because I serve mostly clients in the States. Yeah, so but I love the work that I do. So that is like the professional element. So typically I help businesses with their content strategy. These are people who are trying to get online, trying to start up an online business. So some of them have been in business for about 1 to 5 years, but they're struggling with knowing how to be more visible online, struggling with knowing how to market their business online. So that is typically why they reach out to me for help. So on the personal front, I'm married. I have a little girl. She is in primary 3 this year. And I kind of consider myself a nerd. I was always the person who was sitting in the front row in class, always raising my hands. And I love to read, and I brought a little bit of that into the work that I do. So that's why I've got the books on Amazon and all of that stuff. So yes, in a nutshell, that's about me.
Okay, thank you for that introduction. So our next question, I've actually asked you this before, so I think like other people might be curious about it also. What do you study in university and how do you land your first job?
Yeah, so I studied communications and new media. So that's in the arts and social sciences faculty. So that was my major. I would have actually really loved to do a minor in business, but I think at that point in time, I was almost in my 4th year when they actually came up with the option where you could do a minor in business. So I couldn't pursue that. So my major was full communications and new media. My first job was in the international relations office of, no, what am I talking about? No, that's not my first job. That's my second one. My first job was the intellectual property office in Singapore. So IPOS in Singapore. It was a stat board back then. I honestly haven't kept in touch with all the changes that are going on, but IPOS was a stat board back then when I joined. So that was my first job. I was interested in intellectual property. I studied, we did a little bit of work with understanding IP in communications and new media. So I thought it was interesting. And then that's the reason I took that up. I think it was one of the first few offers that came my way, and I got it even before I officially so-called graduated. And for me, it was really that looking for security, looking for that, okay, just grab the first thing that comes your way. So that's how I basically landed in IPOS. Yeah.
Okay, so like you were saying, you actually work as the manager of marketing and communication at NUS International Relations Office. So I believe that's your last job before you became self-employed, right? Yeah, so what made you leave your role at NUS International Relations Office?
Yeah, so correct. So after IPOS, I was looking for, I was doing a little bit of marketing at IPOS, but I was looking for a role that allowed me to do more of that work. And that was what actually led me to IRO within NUS. So I actually left because I was going on maternity leave, and I was pregnant back then, and I decided I wanted to take a little bit of a break. So pretty much that's why I left NUS, and I actually fully intended to go back to work 1 year after I took a break to have my little girl. But I had a little bit of a health scare. So I had to go and get surgery, had to go and get myself sorted out. I actually had another job offer from one of the government offices here, but I couldn't take up that offer because I had to go and get my surgery and all of that done. So I was at home, and I was going through treatment and stuff like that, and I was like, what do I do? Because it's either do something or do nothing. So that was how I pretty much stumbled into entrepreneurship. I actually started blogging about marketing. I've always had an interest in that. So I really started a blog, started writing about things that I saw. People were asking about marketing, or things that I felt people were not really talking about. And I started attracting people. And then that's when the emails started coming, and people were like, would you want to work? Can I work with you? Are you taking clients? And that's pretty much how I started being an entrepreneur, really by accident. Yeah.
Okay, so like you said, you started becoming an entrepreneur by accident. So what was your impression of self-employment and entrepreneurship before you got into it?
Yeah, I thought it was not for me at all, because the kind of the family and the background that I'm from, we were always told, you go to school, you get good grades, then you get your degree, go find a job. So the road to success, so-called, was paved with, getting a degree, getting a job, solid job, and that's about it. So we were not really encouraged to think beyond the security of a 9 to 5. So I always felt that entrepreneurship was something that, it had to kind of be in your blood for you to do it. And I always felt that it was not for people like me. So it was just an assumption that I had. And I've never ever considered being an entrepreneur. It was never a part of the plan at all. So my impression was, entrepreneurship was always for others, never for myself. I never saw me in that way. I didn't even explore options along those lines.
I think a lot of people can relate to that as well. Like, you don't really expect to be an entrepreneur. So how do you go from fearing entrepreneurship and the unknown to embracing it now?
So yeah, it was, like I said, one of those things. It was really by accident. And for me, it was like, okay, I could just sit at home and do nothing, or I could try this out. So I went into this having a lot of fear, not really knowing like the right or the wrong. And I didn't really have people to talk to, because at that point in time, like online businesses or blogging, you don't really have a lot of people in Singapore doing that. So I didn't have anyone around me who was doing that I can speak to. So it was just kind of figuring it out, looking at what others are doing, reading a lot, doing your own research, and just going into it. I think I never really fully embraced it. I was just kind of like being taken for a ride in that sense, because I never expected people to reach out and ask me if, I was taking clients and stuff like that. So I had to really figure things out along the way. I was knee deep in it before I kind of embraced it. I think it was only like in my second year of doing the job that I felt that, okay, I think this is something that I can do for the rest of my life in that sense. So I think that was when the embrace portion of it came in, never when I started out. Yeah.
Okay, so there's been an increasing number of people aspiring to be their own boss, especially after the COVID period. So what are your thoughts on this?
I think it's amazing that people are more open-minded to and at least thinking that that's an option. I think a couple of years ago, there was never something that people would even think about. They never really considered being an entrepreneur. I think it's very important for people to understand and really lean into things that they're passionate about, or like hobbies and stuff like that, because those really give you clues into things that you can pursue. Sometimes we just automatically assume that that's not something that I can earn a living from. like for me, one of those things, I assume that, writing or doing any type of creative work is not something that I can earn a living from. So it's assumptions that you have. And I'm sure that a lot of people with so many different passions, but it's not something that you think you can turn it into a business, or within your work, maybe do more of it. It's just not something that we naturally think of. But I think it's something that we should really encourage and welcome, that people are kind of thinking of this option. Yeah.
Sorry, if I may jump in here, you mentioned earlier that you only really immerse yourself into this role in your second year of doing this as a self-employed. What gave you sufficient motivation though to keep on continuing this for 2 years?
Yeah, so I think the interaction with people, the more I put myself out there with like writing with a blog, I started to pitch myself to appear on different podcasts. And then hearing me, people would write back, they would send me emails. I think that was really the motivation to keep going, because it gave me a signal, gave me a sign that, okay, whatever I'm putting out there, the content that I'm creating out there is resonating. And that's the reason why people are kind of replying. So yeah, and I also kind of had the mentality that I was in this for the long run. So I had a couple of examples where I was looking at people in the online space doing consultancy as well, and they were doing well. They had a really healthy, good business. And that gave me the encouragement that it's possible. So I looked at mentors, so-called, and that gave me an idea of that the pathway is possible. So that kind of coupled with people writing in to me and just an encouragement, I think that really kept me going.
I see. Actually, if you still recall, do you remember when you actually start getting the traction where people started responding to your blog? If not, if that took a while, before people started replying to you though, how do you find that motivation in that sense? Because I think that's the issue with content creation, right? There are so many people like creating content these days, and before they become successful, it's really just the grind of like doing it over and over.
I agree. So I would say I really got traction maybe about 6 to 9 months in. So for the first about 6 to 9 months was really just, it was pretty silent. And you're just putting out there, you get a little bit of noise, but nothing much. I think one of the things that I came into this was I never really fully embraced it, but at the back of my mind, I always had this idea that, okay, I do want to do this for the long run, and hopefully I can turn it into a business. And I was kind of in that situation where I had nothing to lose, because, I couldn't go back to work at that point in time. So that just kept me going in that sense. So yeah, it's really, I think about having grit and having that perseverance to just be in this for the long run. Because I know a lot of people, they do it for 2 months, they do it for 3 months, and then they don't see anything, and then they kind of just abandon the whole thing. And like you said, there's just so much noise out there these days. So it's being willing to stick it out and knowing why you're doing it, and being very clear about your intent and your purpose. Once you're clear on that, then it's possible for you to be in it for the long run.
Have you? Thanks for sharing all these insights. Nonetheless, though, have you ever had days where you just felt totally unmotivated into like producing the article?
Of course. For sure. Sometimes you feel like the best kept secret, in a sense, where you feel that you're doing all of this amazing work, but no one is paying attention, and you see others doing a crappy job, but they are, they are having a big audience, and then everyone is like, all of those likes and shares and stuff like that. So yes, there are so many days where you just feel like, what am I doing? And is it worth it? But despite that, it's knowing how to pull yourself up and then to move. So definitely, I still have days now, like even 6-7 years into business, I still have days like that where I feel like, what am I doing? Is it worth it? I think it's natural, and I think don't expect highs all the time. I think that's the mistake people make they think that, oh, you're your own boss, you can do this and that, you can go sit drinks in the beach or whatever. I think there's this misconception. So they think that every time it's a high, but there are many, many lows with anything that you do, any new thing that you're pursuing, there are many lows. But be prepared to have those lows so that you can come out of it and then you kind of grow. And there's also a lot of false beliefs and misconceptions that the trajectory is just like way up there. It really isn't. It's really kind of like a slow, pretty much it's like a plateau in your first 1 to 2 years, even before you start to take off. I think with even with any new skill that you're learning, don't expect to get really good at it immediately. I think a lot of people give up so soon. So expect to have a plateau before you kind of take off. Yeah.
So actually, perhaps one last question for now is that how do you actually like personally prepare yourself for the lows? Do you allow yourself to take a break for that one day, or do you say, okay, no, this is my objective for the day, I'll still force myself to write this article even if it may not be up to my standard, even if I may have like a writer's block?
I've done both. I've pushed myself, especially in the early years. I pushed myself and then feeling even worse. But now I think I've learned that, okay, if I'm having a bad day and things are just not working, I usually will go complain to someone, usually my husband or my mom. I complain to someone, and then typically I would go and binge Netflix just to give myself a break, or take a walk, just kind of abandon the work for a while before coming back to it. But in the early years, yes, I do try and push through, but it's not very effective, and I've come to understand that now, because you are going to put out there really subpar work. And if you're going to show up with that kind of energy, it's not going to help anyone. So obviously, if you have commitments, you've committed to meet with someone, try and show up, even though you're having a terrible day. But apart from that, once all of that is taken care of, try and just take a breather, because you need to clear your mind.
Thanks for the honest sharing. I can relate to the binging Netflix.
Okay, so as you said, like, it's not always going to be a high, there's going to be lows as well. So like amidst the lows, what do you love most about being your own boss?
I honestly love the freedom. I love the fact that I set the terms of what I want to do. So, I mean, one of those best things is I don't have to ask permission to take a day off, or if I'm not well, I don't have to ask permission from anyone, or if I need to go to my doctor's school, I don't have to ask permission. Like, the freedom is what I really love, and I love doing things on my terms. So if there's a certain thing that, I mean, just to kind of speak about a little bit about my work, because I'm in the consultancy space, and sometimes you see other consultants doing things that can be a little bit shady, a little bit sleazy. And even though you hear that those things really would get you a lot of clients, or those things will get you a lot of money, blah, 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 you choose to show up the way you want to show up. So if you're not feeling a project, it doesn't jive with your values or your certain things that you want to live and stand by, then you don't do it. So you have that freedom to take and drop projects. I think that's what I love the most. Yeah.
Okay, so just veering a little bit away. So you said that like there are a few people in the industry that does do like more sleazy, and like, do you think that it gives like people in the marketing industry like a bad rep? And if it does, then when you face clients, like, how do you like overcome that? How do you convince them?
I think it's not just a few, it's many people doing many shady things. And yes, they do give a really bad reputation to the entire industry. I mean, I don't know how many people here are interested in pursuing marketing as a field or as a career or whatever it is. But, there is selling involved when you're doing marketing, but there's a very negative connotation associated with selling. But selling can be positive if you come at it with an intention of serving the client. So you're basically giving them the information that they need to make a decision on whether they want to purchase your goods or purchase your services. So if you come at it at that angle, then selling is honestly, it's not bad or it's not negative at all. Selling is just something that's part of the process. So for me, I view selling as education because that's the way I approach my work. So I'm giving the person the information that they need to make a decision on whether they want to hire me or hire something, like a book or a course that I'm putting together, or buy that. That's how I approach it. So so when clients come to me, a lot of them are burnt from these things that they've heard. They've purchased things that didn't live up to expectations, or they've hired people that didn't live up to expectations. So yes, you do need to deal with that. And when they share these things with you, you do need to let them know how your approach is different. And I think that's where content comes in, because when you show up online, when you share things on, whether it's on Instagram or LinkedIn or wherever that might be, it gives them a chance to view your approach. It gives them a chance to view your the way you approach the work. And I think that is, it kind of gives them an insight into, is this person for me or not? So if when you're building your personal brand, whatever stage you guys are at, I think it's really important that you remember that everything that you put online is there. It can be easily found. So be intentional with what you share, because I think everyone needs to be intentional about their personal brand, because when someone calls you for an interview, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to go and find you online. So whether it's on LinkedIn or wherever you are, just be aware of that. And always think that your next job opportunity, or any opportunity for that matter, might come from someone viewing something that you posted. So for me, that's how I get opportunities these days. Anything that I post on LinkedIn, sometimes people will drop me a note, Meera, I heard you did this. I watched this this podcast that you did, or this summit that you were on, or you shared this post. I think you would be a perfect fit for this other event, or something like that. So this is how opportunities will come your way. So you don't need to have the perfect answers, but just be aware of how you are showing up online. Yeah.
Okay, so the COVID-19 pandemic has really changed the whole industry as well as entrepreneurship. So how has COVID-19 affected your career and maybe your personal life?
For me, I think, initially it was really dealing with the, because my husband's a doctor, so he really had, it was kind of like really the front line. And that obviously had a little bit of stress with people not really adhering to like the rules and stuff like that, and having to manage it. So that was like more on the personal front. On the career front, I think there was a little bit of a lull, especially when COVID first broke, because everyone was really scrambling and trying to figure out what was going on with themselves and their lives and their families and stuff like that. So I had a little bit of a lull. But after that, there were more businesses who were purely offline, trying to get online. And then I had people reaching out to me and trying to figure out, okay, now my studio closed down. I'm trying to bring everything online. How do I market this, or how do I do this? So so there was a period of lull, followed by kind of like more people finding me. Yeah, that's how it kind of went.
So during the COVID pandemic, you actually had a growth, is it?
Not immediately. I would say perhaps maybe 6 months later. Like the first 6 to 9 months, like really, maybe even the first year, it was, I wouldn't say there was a growth. It was really like a plateau, or even more of like a downward curve in a sense, because people were more cautious about their spending, what they were, so yeah, I would say it was kind of like a plateau in a sense. But after that, I would say it picked up, because everyone was really serious about getting online and figuring out how to market their stuff and their work. I saw more offline businesses, like people running the yoga studios, people running like wellness, like cafes and stuff like that, trying to bring their business online and wondering how to do it.
Okay. So on that note, what do you think are the skills, hard and soft, that you think one must have in order to be self-employed, or maybe to be in the marketing industry?
I think there are a lot of soft skills more than the hard skills, because the hard skills I think you can learn any time of the day. It's the soft skills that kind of differentiate one person from the other. So if it's really going into, if it's more of like an entrepreneurship, self-employed kind of thing, you really need to have grit, have a long-term kind of mindset, and yeah, basically these two things, like the fundamental, if it's self-employment. If it's just like the marketing in general, I think have a very curious mindset. That's important, because things in marketing, especially online, they're changing so rapidly. So you do need to have that hunger and passion to want to learn. And I would say have a sense of wanting to serve, because when you want to serve people would kind of see that energy from you, and you automatically attract more people that want to work with you. So come in with the mentality that you want to serve someone. And I think that's the best way to attract business, attract clients, anything of that sort.
Okay, so like what are some of the resources that people can look to if they want to become an entrepreneur? And like, what do you advise your clients to do? Yeah.
I think there's so much. It really depends on what aspect of marketing you want to focus on, like whether it's ads or whether it's social media or whether it's like SEO. There's so many different silos. I would say it's always good for someone to have like a basic foundational knowledge on every single thing. So just there's no way you can be like a pro in all of those areas. There's absolutely no way. Like me being in marketing, there are things that, yes, I know SEO, but would I personally do it for a client? No, I would rather send you to someone else who is better at that. So that's not where my expertise lies. So foundational stuff, it's really important to kind of know, okay, what are ads? How do you run ads? What's SEO? Know the basics of it, but always kind of lean into, but what am I most interested in? Some people are really good at running ads for clients. Some people are really good at doing SEO. Some people are really great at content or social media. So try and figure out where exactly within marketing your passion lies. And even if it's in your current job, once you figure out, hey, this is something I'm interested in, go speak to your boss or speak to your team lead or something of that sort, and ask them for more opportunities for you to kind of do that, whatever it is that you figured out. So because the more you do it, the more you'll kind of learn whether this is for me. Do I enjoy it? Do I like it? Yeah, so I think the first thing is really read. You don't have to take an expensive program or anything of that sort. There are lots and lots of books on Amazon, really inexpensive books. Go and just read, have a general understanding of what marketing is. What are you trying to do with marketing? And then after that, just start putting stuff out there, if you can, whether it's on Instagram or LinkedIn, just start experimenting with content creation, or look at how other people are doing their ads, things like that. So there's no like, you have to do this or have to do that. It really depends on your interest.
So what were the first few resources that you started getting into to get into this industry? Or were there anything that inspired you?
I read a lot of blogs on marketing, like the HubSpot, Marketing Profs. Like these were the blogs that I would go and read. And then obviously I would go on Amazon, because there are many books on Amazon. So for me, it was basically these two things. Every now and then there would be a couple of people who would stand out in the way that they explain things. Then I would go and kind of binge their work, whatever they put online. I'd go and watch their videos. This is pretty much how I learned. But the main thing is, whoever you read or whoever you follow, ultimately you want to form your own views. You don't want to take whatever they say and kind of take that as the only way to do it. Because if you want to be a consultant, or you are trying to go into marketing and serve others, you need to have a stand in whether this is right, this is wrong. So you will only know through experimentation. So always go at it with, like I said, a curious mindset. If something that someone says, even though they may be established, they may have a lot of people following them, whatever it is, if you feel that, hey, doesn't really sound right, or go in with and lead with your hunches, or your doesn't sound right, anything of that sort that makes you question what they're saying, then lean into that doubt and do your own research. For me, that's pretty much how I kind of grew, and how I figured out my own way of doing things, and how I serve my clients. Because, if you're doing the same thing as everyone else, then why should someone come to you versus go to someone else, right? So for you to stand out, you need to figure out your own framework, your own methodology, your own style. So don't be so quick to just adopt everyone's views. It's good to have an understanding, it's good to have knowledge, but at the same time, see where your kind of X factor or your USP is. Yeah.
Hi, Meera, if I may jump in again, right?
Yeah.
In order to discover your own X factor, I believe you do need to have the experience to experiment with different marketing campaigns, for instance. However, as perhaps somebody that may be entering the marketing industry, finding their first client may be even, a difficult process to start with. So how, I guess, would you advise somebody who is just entering the field to be able to find their X factor when they cannot even get a client to work with them?
Yeah. This is a tough one. And I mean, what I'm going to share, a lot of people might not really agree, but when I started out, I did quite a bit of work for free in exchange for a testimonial. So, when you're starting out, you have absolutely no credibility, like no one really knows who you are. And it's the testimonials that people give you, it's very important, because once you have them on your site, or you show them to others, that's when you will get more people coming in. So once I had people like reach out and ask me, do you take clients and stuff like that, I was still at a spot where I was not confident enough to charge, because I was still figuring things out. So I would say that, I'm happy to do this for you for free in exchange for a testimonial. If you're happy with what I do for you, or happy with what I share with you. And most people were happy to kind of jump on that. And this is how I built up my initial base, by sharing content for free, or doing a little bit of free work. So if there is someone that where you could, and be very upfront and honest with them, that you're starting out, you want to kind of build your portfolio, would it be okay if you did this work for them? And if they're happy with the work that you did, they can share like a testimonial. This is how I got started out. I mean, I got started in the industry. So this is one thing that you can try to kind of get those first testimonials and have something in your portfolio. It's a very unpopular opinion, because people would say, but you're working for free. If you work for free, then you kind of undervalue yourself. And once you do that, more people will come and expect you to do things for free. I kind of agree with that, but I think it's important to kind of keep the circle closed. You don't have to kind of blast and go to a big Facebook group with 50,000 people and say, I'm working for free. Anyone just come your way. Don't do that. Go through like people within your network or connection, or anyone that where you can personally reach out to them and then offer your services in that way.
And in your case, the first few clients they worked with, I assume it did well, which is why it attracted more clients for you.
Yes. So yeah, they were very happy with the work that I did. So they shared like a written kind of testimonial which I could share on my site. And once I started like putting those testimonials there, obviously people would see that, hey, okay, she did this for someone else, so she could do it for me as well. And then more people would reach out. Correct.
Right. Because I was just thinking, given that marketing, I feel is something that involves a lot of uncertainty. Sometimes when things fail, it may not just be because of you, maybe because it's not the right time to execute this thing, or the company's products is just not ready for it. So then how do you go about, especially if your first few clients were to be unsuccessful, right? That would definitely take a huge blow to your self-esteem, especially if, and it may not even be your fault. So is it then again just, you have to believe in yourself and then just keep on trying?
I guess so. I think another thing that you it depends on the type of work that you're doing. Especially if it involves money, like spending money on ads and stuff like that, then yes, you have to be very careful with the expectations that you set. If you're just trying to do something like for me, the type of work that I did for them was like any type of review where I would kind of review the touch points that they had in the online space, how it was their email, how are their emails, how are their landing pages, how's their site, and then give them feedback based on that, where there were gaps, where there were opportunities. That's the kind of work that I did. So when it's along those lines, I think people are, it's eye-opening for people when they're like, oh, okay, I didn't realize I had this gap. I didn't realize that I'm leaking traffic from this source, anything along those lines. I think the more dangerous one where you mentioned would apply when you are basically spending the client's money. So yes, be more on the cautious side, especially when you don't really have a portfolio as yet. Be a little bit more cautious in the way that you do stuff, and just be honest with whoever it is that you're doing the work for, that things might fail because of this or that. So yeah, I think being open and transparent is very important, regardless of whether it's your first client or your 100th.
Thanks for sharing.
Okay. Do you ever regret not getting into this industry earlier, or do you wish that you studied maybe marketing or business in university?
I do regret not getting into this earlier. I feel like, and you guys have time on your side, I feel like I wasted my 20s in a sense, where I would go to work and then come back and I would just watch TV, and I didn't, because I didn't really think this was an option at all, and I didn't really explore my hobbies and passions because I think there's nothing that could come of them. So that's something that I regret. Whether I regret not doing marketing in school, I would say not really. Because if I can be very candid, sometimes I feel that the curriculum that they teach in universities is not very applicable to the online space today, because things are moving so fast, and the stuff that they're teaching in business school doesn't always keep up. So honestly, I don't feel like I've lost out on not studying marketing or business in university. But I do regret not starting this sooner and not being, not giving my passion or my hobbies a chance, in a sense. Yeah.
So with that, what is one advice you would give yourself before you started getting into entrepreneurship or marketing?
You mean give my younger self in this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say probably be more hungry in my 20s. Hungry in a sense, like, don't just, okay, fine, just because you have a stable paycheck, don't just kind of sit down, be looking for what you can do. And whatever hobbies you have, whatever passions, don't take them for granted. See if there is something, whether you can develop them further. That's something that I never thought to do. So I think if I could go back in time, so-called, that's the advice that I would give myself. Explore that writing, see what comes of it. Take a class on writing. It's just things that I never did.
Okay, so like you've mentioned before, that you get to do things on your own terms. So what is work-life balance to you?
Work-life balance. I think for me, work-life balance, it means different things to different people. It's really understanding what your priorities are. We all have different priorities, and we all have different stages in life. So for me, I understand, like, the way I work now is not how I used to work maybe 5 years ago. So 5 years ago, my daughter was very, very tiny, very little. So I kind of fit my schedule based on her, when she slept, when she woke up, when she fed. Yes, I could have grown a lot faster if I had taken a little bit more of an aggressive approach. But for me, I knew what my priorities were then. Like now, she's in school for a longer period, so I can do things a little bit more. I can grow at a little bit more faster pace. So for me, that's really what work-life balance is really understanding your priorities and then shifting based on that. Sometimes you can do things for yourself. Sometimes you maybe take a little bit of a step back. So there's no constant. It really depends on what stage of your life you're in. Yeah.
Actually, on that note, right, given the amount of flexibility you have to control your own time, how do you maintain that level of discipline to follow your own schedule?
Okay, so this one, right? I'm more of like I'm what you would say is a type A kind of person. So I thrive on, if I set like things for me to do, I would do them. So I don't have an issue with like procrastination and stuff like that, and never really did, which works well for me. My husband is the opposite, so I think this question would serve him better. But I get what you're saying, for me, there are like, I would be very attuned with when I work best. We all have highs and lows in energy on a day-to-day basis. Like some people are morning people, some people are not. Some people have more energy in the afternoon, some people don't. So I know when I work on certain things best. And when you run your own business, there are so many different aspects that you have to handle. You have to handle client work, you have to handle the operations, the admin stuff. So I would see where I work best in what area. So if it's admin stuff, if I'm having more of like anything like in the afternoon where I'm a little bit low energy, I would kind of do my admin stuff because it doesn't require a lot of brain work. But where I really need to be my best, I would try and schedule my client calls, whether it's in the morning or in the early part of the evening. That's where I feel I'm my best. So I try and do it along those lines. Recently, I try to protect some days in the week. Like Monday is like my day where I just read, try and soak up on new information, new trends, because for you to be able to give to others or serve others, you need to kind of stock up on yourself. So if you are not reading, you're not keeping up to date with what's happening out there, it's very difficult for you to do your work well. And I felt that after a certain time, I didn't have space to do any of that. So like now Monday, I don't schedule anything at all. I try to just take that time for me to just read and be and research and stuff like that. So that has helped. Yeah.
Thank you.
So on the flip side of Sean's question, since you get to decide your own time, were there any points in time where you felt like you were overworked or you took on too much?
You mean overworked in terms of the schedule?
Yeah, because like you get to decide on what you get to do, right? So
Yeah.
were there any time where like you felt like overwhelmed and like taking on too much?
Yeah, I think especially in the first 3 years of business, because you're learning and then you are doing at the same time. There's so much to learn as you're putting things together and you're figuring things out. The learning curve is really steep when you're trying to build a business. So I would say, especially the first 3 years, there have been times where like I've just been working into the night because in the day, maybe because my daughter didn't sleep, so I didn't have the time, so I would just work in the night, just trying to kind of build things and put systems in place and things like that. So yes, there was a period where I've been terribly overworked. I was also not used to the time difference. So I had to like many times like meet people at 10 or 11. And I didn't really know how to handle that at that point in time. So I would say that was the most overworked phase of my entire like business. And it's actually a lot more work than being an employee. Like when you're your own, running your own business is way more work. I think I've never worked harder in my life as compared to, that those 3 years. Yeah, it was crazy.
So what were some of the things that you did to cope with that during that period of time?
Honestly, those 3 years, I was a little bit of a grouchy person, I think. I think my husband got the brunt of it. Yeah, for me, the way I de-stress would be like coffee. I'm not like a go travel to de-stress kind of person. I'm more of like the little things kind of person. So for me, it's like a coffee or meeting a friend or watching TV or reading a book. These are tiny things where I would try and fit into the day, but most of the time I had to be coaxed to do them by my husband or my mom, because I wouldn't take the time, but I had to be reminded. So it's good to have a support system when regardless of whether you're an employee or you're starting your own business, it's good to have some people who are looking out for you and who can tell that you're not yourself, you're stressed, go take a break. I think it's useful to have that in a friend or in a family member. Yeah.
Like you said, it's important to have a support system, right? But because entrepreneurship is such a controversial thing, you might not actually have family support or maybe like people to support you. Then how do you advise someone to deal with it?
Yeah, I agree. Because for me, when my parents didn't really understand. I think even now they don't really understand what I do. Especially at that point in time, they really couldn't figure out. They were like, what the hell is she doing, kind of thing. But yeah, so yes, I mean, I couldn't rely on them for that support in that sense. But so I think my only point of support would be my husband. And even then, he also doesn't really understand my work because he's in a completely different field. So I think it can be a very lonely journey. Entrepreneurship can be a very lonely journey, especially when you don't have anyone to kind of speak with. But as long as you have people who wish you well, that is better than anything else. Even if your friends don't really understand, like my friends don't really understand what the hell I'm doing. They all have a 9 to 5 and they're very happy with their 9 to 5. Oops, sorry. Yeah. So, but they wish you well. As long as you're happy, they are happy. So I think it's good to have these people out there. But yes, I agree that it's a very lonely journey, specifically if no one around you understands the industry that you're trying to get into, which is pretty much what happened to me.
Okay, so last question. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years, whether it be career or personal life?
Next 5 to 10 years, I am hoping to do more speaking, like speaking at other events and stuff like that. Obviously hoping to grow my business further and probably shift my business model a little bit. I have written books, but I'm hoping to, I don't know how to explain to you guys. I mean, the books that I've written, I've self-published myself on Amazon, but I am hoping to work with a traditional publisher for my future books. So like, these are the things that I would say within the next 3 to 5 years. I think 10 years, the horizon is a little bit too long for me to see, but within 3 to 5 years, I think these are the things that I see myself in the direction that I'm going in. Yeah.
Actually, on the note of the books that you've written, right? For a complete beginner, which book would you recommend us to start off with?
Okay, if someone is just looking to get into doing some kind of online business, I would say look at The Blog Startup. Yeah, it's called The Blog Startup. So that is really just the basics of how to think about your brand, how to think about your website, what do you want to put out there. Yeah, so very foundational book. I would say start with that.
I see. Okay. And in the process of writing your books, or perhaps even before all that, were there any particular, I guess, marketing gurus that you yourself were personally inspired by?
There was one guy, his name was called Jeff Goins, Jeffgoins. He is not really a marketing person. He was more of like his blog was for writers. So I've always seen myself as a writer first, a marketer second. So I was really attracted to him because he was the one that actually inspired me to even start blogging and putting my words out there. So he's the one that I always give credit for. Whenever people have asked me who's that first person, I would say it's him, because he was the one who actually kind of inspired me to put your words out there, even though you may be scared. Yeah.
I see. Thank you. Actually, on an unrelated note, right? At the very, very start, you mentioned that I believe most of your clients that you serve were in North America or the States. So is there a particular reason why this is the case? Is it that people in Singapore cannot quite relate, or you prefer to work with clients in the States?
It's a good question. It honestly, it's not that I prefer to work with them. It would be more sane on me if I get people in Asia. But I didn't, I think what happened was when I started out, I didn't go in with the mentality that, no, I'm only going to be for the Asian audience. I'm only going to be for Singaporean audience. I didn't start with that. So I went in with the mentality that, no, this is going to be for anyone within in the world in that sense. I was looking for one type of client, so-called my ideal customer. And that ideal customer, it doesn't matter whether they were in the States or whether they were in Singapore, but there were certain things that they wanted to do. They wanted to get visible. They wanted to build a business online. This was my ideal customer. The location didn't matter. It just so happened that most of the people who started finding me were from the States. Yeah, so it's the majority of them are from there. And to be honest, it's a very small percentage in Asia. I mean, I don't know why, but yeah, that's just the way it has been. I've never specifically, when I started, I didn't specifically reach out in that way, wanting to just work with them. But as my business grew and as I understood that, okay, majority of them are in the States, then I started to focus more on the marketing on the people in North America. So the podcast that I wanted to be featured, I would pitch podcasts in North America, yeah. So I kind of tailored my marketing after I understood and that most people finding me were from the States. That I did. Yeah.
I see. Thank you. Actually, before I continue on, if the rest have any questions, like Mabel, please feel free to.
Yeah. Hi, Meera. Mabel, I have one question for you. What would you say would be like the most memorable experience or milestone from your entrepreneurship journey so far?
I would say it's selling 100,000 books. That's kind of like a milestone. Yeah. So, I mean, over the years, once I hit that number, it was like, okay, wow, yeah.
So when you first started out, how long did it take for you to write your book, and what was like the process like?
Oh, it's crazy. I think this is something I tell to people as well. And with every book, I kind of die a little death in a sense. So that's how it feels. It's getting better, but yeah, writing a book it's a crazy process. So the first one, I think I took still not too long, because the kind of books I write are shorter in that sense. It's like about 20 to 30,000 words. So it's pretty short compared to like the books in the library, like they're like 50, 100,000 words. So those are not the type that I write. So I think my first one took about 2 to 3 months, which is still, people would say, is relatively short. But there are many people who are putting books out there like one every month. I cannot do that. I just can't. So my first one was about 3 months, but now I try to kind of shorten the process, and I do it in about one to two, because, yeah, I know how to structure, I know how to market the book. So once you know that, it kind of becomes like a template, and your brain it kind of knows how to go, okay, this. But initially, the first 2 books, it was really a torturous process, because there's a lot of self-doubt. You need to write, but you procrastinate on that. You doubt everything. I think the worst thing is editing as you write. This is like the worst thing to do, because you don't want to do that. You want to do a really terrible, dirty draft first, then go and edit. And that's something that I learned along the way. But yeah, good question. Thanks for that.
Yeah, I think I learned also. I didn't even know you could be a self-published on Amazon.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you absolutely can. So you can go, if you want to write something, let's say you want to put a gardening book out there, you can go and you can self-publish on Amazon, and you can have your book up there like tomorrow. So you basically cut out the middleman from the process. You know, when you typically have like a publisher, and I don't know whether you guys must have heard the story of that, J.K. Rowling was kind of rejected by so many publishers before Harry Potter was ever published, like, how many publishers you had to go to. So that's the middleman. And they are very strict in the process, because they only want the best, they only have the $ at the back of their head. So yeah, you basically cut the middleman and you publish your work. You see, the problem with that is, just because you put your book out there doesn't mean that people are going to find it. You need to have a plan for how you're going to sell those books. So if you have like an audience, like followers on Instagram or people that you kind of follow you for stuff, then it's easier to sell your books because you have a built-in audience. So yes, if there's a subject that you're really passionate about, you can go ahead and self-publish on Amazon. You don't pay anything to Amazon. Amazon does take a tiny cut-in fee for everything that you sell, but you set the price, you set the look of how your book looks. Basically, you have a lot of control. That's what I love about self-publishing.
Okay. Yeah, I think I learned a bit too. Thanks. Thanks for sharing.
Actually, if I may touch more on that, if you like it so much, why are you right now, shifting towards a publisher yourself?
For me, I think it's kind of like a bucket list kind of thing. Some people say I want to have a TEDx, I want to speak on TEDx and stuff like that. It's like something that I want to do, just like a challenge, because I know it's something that it's very difficult to get. So it's kind of like a personal challenge. And I mean, I know we're veering off topic a little bit, but there are lots of, again, misconceptions about what people think about when they see a book on like Popular, or they see a book on like Kinokuniya or something like that, and they think that, wow, the authors must be earning a lot. But honestly, they probably earn very little, because a lot of the cost goes to all of the middlemen involved. But when you self-publish, you pocket a lot of the profit yourself. But when you publish with like a traditional publisher, there is more clout, in a sense, more so-called prestige. You do get to see your books in, for instance, the big bookstores. You don't do that. You don't get to see that when you're self-published. So especially in Singapore, it's very hard. I think in the States, you can actually go and reach out to those small bookstores, and then you can say that, hey, I have this book. Can you like stock it up in your stuff like that, in your shop? You can do that. Here, you obviously can't, because our market is very small. So for me, it's more of like a personal challenge. Even though I realize that the results may not be the same, or may even be lesser, but it's kind of like, see how it goes, like a personal challenge for myself. Yeah.
I see. I understand it's nearing 9 already, so perhaps last few questions. For content creators in general, right? Or rather, I guess, writers in general, would you recommend, did you perhaps personally yourself start off writing books, or did it start off with, say, blog posts on WordPress, or nowadays I believe there's Medium?
Yeah. It's correct. So I actually started out with blog, like on WordPress. I did it that way, but if I could go back, I would probably do it on Medium first, because it has a built-in audience, it has built-in traffic, it will reach more people faster. But that's not the way I did it when I started out. So I started out with a very traditional WordPress kind of blog. But yeah, it's good to, rather than write for yourself, write for places like Medium, write for places like HuffPost. Anyone else that already has a blog, already has like an audience of some sort, reach out and ask them if you can guest post for them. Because if you do that, they are getting free content, you are doing the work for them, but in the process, you're kind of building a following. So I did a little bit of that, but if I could go back, I would probably kind of do it in reverse, where I would not do my own site as in yet, but do it on Medium or something of that sort. Yeah, but that's a good question.
Got it. Yeah, I'm very glad that even though you did your own site, and I think those are generally harder to get a following, you still managed to get such a successful following. So one last question from me, back to how most of your clients are on the stage, right? How do you actually go about like adapting to the cultural differences, considering that I don't think, do you travel to the States, to immerse yourself in it? Yeah.
No, not at all. And I think I had a lot of hesitation with whether they would understand the Singaporean accent. There was one thing, because the way they say things are completely different from the way we say things. I remember there was once I was giving a webinar, and I was just talking something, and then they were having this this discussion in chat and like, what did she just say? I didn't understand, you know. Oh, I think she meant this, it's an accent. So when I saw that, I was like, I had that moment of like, you know, self-doubt in a sense. So culturally, I think, yeah, certain things that they would refer to in terms of like pop culture stuff or restaurant, you don't really get it. But it has never really impeded my work. Yeah, it's never really affected my work in a sense, but the way they interacted with people, the way they carry themselves, or the type of terms they use, I think that is stuff that I had to kind of get used to. Yeah, but I never really felt maybe because it's the kind of work that I did, I never really felt the culture as like a barrier or anything of that sort.